The night was cold and wet, rain dripping from broken rooftops and dark alleys. A homeless man sat under an old bridge, his blanket thin, his body shaking from the chill. He was hungry, weak, and forgotten by the world. People walked past him every day, never looking at him, never caring. But tonight was different. Tonight the city held something strange. He had closed his eyes, trying to sleep, when a sudden glow touched his eyelids. It was not the glow of street lamps or passing cars. It was soft and strange, almost alive. He opened his eyes and saw a faint light moving between the shadows of the alley. At first he thought his mind was playing tricks. Hunger and loneliness often made him see things. But then he heard it, a small sound, like a child crying. A weak, trembling cry that pulled at his heart. Slowly he stood up, his legs stiff, his body aching. He followed the light, his steps quiet on the wet ground. The sound grew clearer, a mix of fear and sadness. When he turned the corner, his eyes widened. There, curled against the wall, was a small figure glowing faintly in the rain. It was no ordinary child. Its skin was pale blue, its eyes bright like silver moons. It was shaking, whispering words he could not understand. The man froze, his breath caught in his throat. Was he dreaming, or had he gone mad? He rubbed his eyes and looked again, but the figure was still there, small and fragile. He could not believe it, an alien, lost in the dirty streets of his city. Fear struck him for a moment, fear that soldiers or strange men would come. But stronger than fear was something else. It was pity, it was kindness, it was the memory of when he once had a child of his own. A child he had lost long ago, a pain he carried every day. The alien child looked up at him, eyes full of fear but also trust. Its lips moved, whispering a single sound. "Help," it said, the word broken, but clear enough. The man's heart twisted. Without thinking, he removed his thin blanket and wrapped it around the small figure. The child trembled, but leaned against him. The glow around its body softened, like a candle protected from the wind. He sat down beside the child, his back against the wall. Rain fell around them, the world outside busy and uncaring. He held the child close, feeling its small body shaking. He had nothing, not even food or warmth. But tonight he had something more important. He had a reason to protect, a reason to care. And for the first time in many years, he did not feel alone. Far away, in the same night, strange shadows moved through the city. Dark armored figures searched the streets, their voices sharp, their machines humming. They carried scanners, they looked into alleys, they hunted something. The man did not know it yet, but they were looking for the same glowing child he now held in his arms. And if they found him, both he and the child would be in danger. The man looked at the child again, its silver eyes slowly closing. It trusted him, it chose him. He whispered softly, "Don't worry, I'll keep you safe." The words surprised even him. For a man who had lost everything, these words were heavy. But in that moment, they felt true. He did not know how, he did not know why. But he knew he could not leave the child alone. The rain grew heavier, the city lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, engines roared. The night was no longer just a night. It was the beginning of something that would change his life forever. The city was restless that night. Heavy rain washing the alleys, neon lights flickering over puddles, and hidden engines humming in the distance. The homeless man sat with the alien child under the broken bridge, the blanket wrapped tight around the glowing little body. The child's breathing was soft now, but its eyes opened every few minutes, scanning the shadows like it was afraid of something. The man could feel it too, a strange tension in the air, as if the city itself was waiting for something to happen. Then he heard it, heavy footsteps echoing off the walls, deeper than the steps of normal people. Voices followed, rough and sharp, speaking in a language he did not know. He peeked around the corner, and his heart froze. Figures in dark armor moved slowly down the street, tall and broad, their helmets glowing faint red. They carried strange weapons, long like rifles but buzzing with energy. Behind them, small floating drones hovered, scanning every alley with beams of light. The man pulled back quickly, pressing the child closer. He whispered, "Quiet, don't make a sound." The child nodded weakly, its glowing eyes wide with fear. The man's chest tightened. He had nothing to fight with, nothing to protect them except his will. But he knew if those soldiers found the child, it would be taken, or worse. and maybe he too would disappear forever. Slowly he lifted the child, wrapping the blanket tighter around its small frame. He stepped into the deeper shadows, moving through narrow paths that only the homeless knew. The rain helped cover his tracks, washing away the sound of his steps. He passed broken fences, dumpsters overflowing with trash, and dark tunnels that smelled of rust. The child clung to him, its head resting on his shoulder. It whispered softly in its strange language, words he could not understand but filled with fear and trust. One of the drones buzzed past, a red beam sliding across the walls. The man ducked behind an old metal container, holding his breath. The light hovered inches away from his face before moving on. His heart pounded, sweat mixing with the cold rain. He waited until silence returned before slipping out again. Every step was danger. Every corner could reveal death. As he moved further from the bridge, he noticed more soldiers spreading across the streets. They spoke into devices on their wrists, their voices tense. It was clear they were hunting, clear they were searching for the child. The man realized this was bigger than he thought. This child was not just lost, it was being chased. And if so many armed soldiers were after it, then it must be very important. He hid inside an abandoned shop, its glass shattered and shelves empty. The child sat in the corner, hugging its knees, eyes glowing softly like a star trapped in the dark. The man crouched beside it, whispering, "Who are they? Why do they want you?" The child only shook its head, too weak or too afraid to answer. But then, for the first time, it spoke a word in broken human tongue. "Danger," it whispered, its voice trembling. "Find me." The man stared, his blood running cold. The child was not safe anywhere, not in this city, not while those hunters searched. Suddenly a crash came from the street outside. The man peeked through the broken window and saw one of the armored soldiers throw a metal bin aside like it weighed nothing. The soldier scanned the area, his glowing red eyes locking on the street where the man had passed minutes ago. They were getting closer, too close. The man grabbed the child again, whispering, "We have to move now." They slipped out the back of the shop, through a narrow alley so small only one person could pass at a time. Water dripped from broken pipes, rats scattered at their steps. The man's breath came heavy, but he forced his legs to move faster. Behind them, the sound of boots grew louder, closer. The hunters had found their trail. At the end of the alley was a tall fence, sharp wires at the top. The man looked up, despair hitting him. He had no strength, no way to climb while holding the child. But before he could panic, the alien child lifted a small glowing hand. A spark of strange energy flowed, and the lock on the gate clicked open by itself. The gate swung slowly, creaking under the rain. The man's eyes widened, but he wasted no time. He pushed through, carrying the child to the other side. The moment they slipped through, the gate closed again with another spark. The man stared at the child in shock. You can do this?" he whispered. The child only looked at him, silver eyes glowing, before leaning weakly against his chest. It was clear that every use of this strange power drained it. But it also meant something else. This child was special, very special. From the rooftops above, one of the soldiers scanned the street with a red light. The man crouched low, holding the child tight. He whispered to himself, "I don't know who you are, little one, X. But I'll keep you safe, I promise." The rain kept falling. The city kept breathing, and the hunt had only just begun. The night dragged on, and the man kept moving through the maze of alleys, his body heavy, his stomach empty, and his heart beating too fast. The child in his arms grew weaker, its glow dimming as though the rain was stealing away its strength. He searched for a safe place, somewhere dark, somewhere the hunters would not look. Finally, he found an old sewer entrance, half hidden by trash and broken boards. It smelled of rust and filth, but it was shelter, and that was enough. He pushed the boards aside and slipped inside, the child's head resting on his shoulder. Inside it was dark, only the faint glow from the child's body lighting the walls. Water dripped from above, rats moved in the corners, and the air was thick with damp. The man sat down on a dry patch of stone, pulling the blanket tighter around them. His stomach growled, loud and painful. He had eaten almost nothing in 2 days. The child looked at him with tired silver eyes, its small hands holding the blanket close. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his last piece of food, a small piece of stale bread he had saved. It was hard as stone, barely enough for one, but it was all he had. He stared at it for a long moment, hunger clawing at him. But then he broke it in two, handing the bigger piece to the child. "Here," he whispered. "You need it more than me." The child looked at the bread, then at him, its eyes shining softly. It took the piece slowly, nibbling with small bites. The man chewed his own piece, dry and tasteless, but his heart felt lighter. For the first time in years, he was sharing food not out of need, but out of care. The child reached out with one glowing hand, touching his rough fingers. Suddenly warmth spread through his skin, moving up his arm. The ache in his legs faded. His body felt lighter, stronger, as if he had slept for days. He looked at the child in shock, but the little one only smiled weakly. Somehow, its touch gave him strength, as though it was giving back what he had given. It was strange, but in that moment he felt hope. He had lived so long without it, and now it was alive in him again. The man leaned against the wall, memories flooding back. Once, long ago, he had a family, a small home, and a daughter with eyes bright as stars. But a fire had taken it all, and with it his will to keep living. He had fallen into the streets, forgotten by everyone. Yet now, with this strange child in his arms, he felt like that broken part of his heart was beating again. He whispered softly, "I lost everything once. I won't lose you too." The child did not understand all his words, but it understood his tone. It leaned against him, its eyes closing, trusting him completely. Outside, the sound of boots echoed faintly, the hunters still searching. The man listened carefully, every muscle tense. They could not stay in one place for long, but the child needed rest. He decided to wait until dawn, moving again only when the city grew louder. Noise and crowds could hide their escape better than the empty night. Hours passed slowly, the rain easing into silence. The man drifted between sleep and wakefulness, always alert. At one point he heard voices close above the sewer grate, metallic and sharp. He held the child tighter, praying the soldiers would pass. The red glow of a drone's light flickered through the cracks. But after a moment, it moved on, leaving them hidden. When morning came, the city above grew alive with cars, chatter, and markets opening. The man lifted the child again, wrapping it in the blanket so the glow was hidden. His stomach ached with hunger, but the strange strength the child had given him kept him moving. He slipped into the crowd, blending with the faceless people who never looked twice at the homeless. The hunters moved too, but slower now, careful not to be seen by the humans of the city. They scanned silently, their glowing eyes following shadows. The man stopped by a corner where food stalls filled the air with smells of bread and roasted meat. His stomach twisted painfully, but he had no money, only empty pockets. The child looked at him, its eyes wide, clearly hungry again. He sighed, pulling it away before the temptation grew. But as they walked, he noticed the child's glow pulsing faintly. Every time its silver eyes dimmed, his chest tightened with fear. He realized the child would not survive much longer without help. He needed answers. He needed to know what the child was and why it was hunted. But more than that, he needed to keep it alive. The man whispered, "I don't know why fate brought you to me, little one, but I'll see this through." The child looked at him with trust that pierced his soul. And for the first time in many years, he felt like he was more than a shadow. He was someone who mattered, someone with a purpose. Far behind them, the hunters. He grouped in the alleys, their leader raising a device that blinked with red lights. The tracker pulsed faster, locking onto the faint trail of alien energy. Their voices hissed through the air, cold and certain. They had not lost their target, not yet. And soon, the man and the child would be running again. For the hunt was only growing stronger, and the city was no longer safe. The man moved quickly through the busy streets, the alien child hidden beneath his blanket. The morning crowd was thick, people rushing to work, vendors shouting prices, cars honking. It should have been a perfect cover, but the man's heart would not calm. He knew the hunters were still near, and he felt their eyes even when he could not see them. The child clung to him weakly, its glow faint under the cloth. Its small hand gripped his shirt, trembling with every sound of heavy boots behind them. The man whispered softly, "Stay close, don't be afraid." But fear was heavy in his own chest, heavier than the hunger he had known all his life. Then he saw it, across the street, a black armored figure standing still. its red visor scanning the crowd, its weapon hanging at its side. The man froze for a moment, but then forced himself to walk calmly. If he ran now, the soldier would notice. But when the soldier raised its arm and spoke into its device, the man knew they had been seen. He pushed into the crowd, moving faster. People cursed and shouted as he bumped into them, but he did not stop. Behind him came the sound of armored boots, heavy and fast. The hunters were chasing, and the crowd split like water before their advance. The man turned into a narrow street, his breath sharp, the child holding on tighter. The rain had started again, making the ground slippery. His shoes, old and torn, skidded as he ran. The alley twisted, and he ducked through a broken doorway into an abandoned factory. Rusty machines stood silent, covered in dust, their shapes like shadows in the gloom. He moved between them, keeping low, his ears catching every sound. Then the hum of drones filled the air, red lights sweeping through the broken windows. He ducked behind a large machine, holding the child close. The drones passed slowly, beams crawling across the floor. One beam landed on the edge of his blanket, glowing red against the damp cloth. The man's heart jumped. He pulled back quickly. The drone tilted, buzzing louder, its scanner rising. He grabbed a piece of rusted metal from the ground and threw it across the factory. The clang echoed, drawing the drone away. Its beam swung in the other direction, chasing the sound. The man wasted no time, slipping deeper into the shadows. But the heavy boots of soldiers entered the building, their voices sharp and commanding. The man hurried down a staircase into the lower floor. The air was colder, darker, water dripping from pipes. He ran through a tunnel, the child's small voice whispering in fear. Then ahead of him was a locked iron gate, tall and unmovable. His breath caught, trapped again, nowhere to run. The child stirred in his arms, lifting one glowing hand. A spark of strange blue energy leapt from its fingers. The old lock clicked open with a crack, and the gate creaked wide. The man looked in awe, but no time was left to question. He rushed through, pulling the gate shut behind him. The sound of boots and drones filled the tunnel as the soldiers entered above. They were close, too close. The tunnel opened into another street, narrow and lined with broken walls. The man stumbled into the light, rain falling hard. He could hear the shouts of soldiers behind him, the hum of drones above. He ran, legs burning, lungs on fire, but he kept going. The child's small body was heavy now, too weak to walk on its own. Still, he held it close, whispering again and again, "Hold on, little one, just hold on." Up ahead was a fence of iron bars, tall and sharp. The man stopped, staring in despair. He had no strength to climb, not with the child in his arms. The sound of boots was closer now, the hunters coming fast. The child lifted its glowing hand again, but its power was weaker this time. The lock sparked, but did not open. The child's glow dimmed, its strength fading. The man looked into its silver eyes, full of fear. He clenched his jaw, determination rising. With a shout, he threw his body against the fence. The old rusted metal bent with a screech, opening just enough for him to squeeze through. He pushed the child through first, then forced himself after, scraping his arms against the sharp iron. On the other side, he fell hard into the mud, gasping for air. The child lay beside him, eyes closing, its small chest rising weakly. The man pulled it close again, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. Behind the fence, red lights flickered as soldiers appeared, scanning the street. But they could not pass through the twisted bars quickly enough. The man stumbled to his feet, carrying the child once more. Every step was agony, but he kept moving, deeper into the rain-soaked city. He whispered again, voice shaking, "I don't know how long I can keep this up, little one, but I won't let them take you, I promise." The child's eyes flickered open, and for a moment, a faint smile touched its face. It trusted him completely, and that trust gave him strength. The man walked into the shadows, not knowing where the road would lead. But he knew one thing. He could not stop now. The chase had only begun, and the night still had many dangers waiting. The rain slowed to a drizzle, the city quieting as night returned. The man carried the alien child into an old warehouse at the edge of the river. The place was empty, only broken crates and the sound of dripping water filling the silence. He laid the child down on a pile of dry cloth he found, covering it with his worn blanket. The child's glow was weaker than ever, faint as if it might vanish. The man's chest tightened, fear pressing heavy on him. He whispered, "You need help, little one, but I don't know how." The child stirred, silver eyes flickering open. For the first time, it tried to speak more than a single word. Its voice was soft, broken, but clear enough to understand. "Home, ship, crash," it whispered, the words heavy with effort. The man leaned closer, his breath caught. "You came from the sky?" he asked slowly. The child nodded weakly, raising a trembling hand. A faint blue light shimmered above its palm, forming a small hologram. The man's eyes widened as the image took shape. It was a starship, sleek and shining, but broken, flames and smoke pouring from its sides. The picture shifted, showing the ship crashing in the forests outside the city. The man stared in silence, the truth sinking into him. This was no ordinary lost child. This was a traveler from the stars. And those soldiers were not men of Earth. They were something else. Hunters, enemies, invaders, whoever they were, they wanted the child badly. The child's silver eyes filled with tears as the image faded. It whispered again, "Help home." The man felt his heart twist. He had nothing, not even food or shelter, yet this small being trusted him with its life. He could walk away. He could pretend none of this was real. But deep inside, he knew he could not. This was bigger than him, but it was also the first time in years he felt a reason to keep going. He placed a rough hand on the child's shoulder and said, "I'll take you there, to your ship, no matter what." A soft glow flickered in the child's eyes, a sign of trust. But before peace could settle, the sound of engines thundered outside. The man rushed to the window, peering through a crack. A black armored vehicle rolled down the street, red lights flashing from its sides. Soldiers poured out, scanning the area with their glowing visors. They were closing in fast. The man grabbed the child again, wrapping the blanket tight. He slipped through the back of the warehouse into a maze of containers by the river. The smell of oil and rust filled the air, the ground slick under his feet. He moved quickly, keeping to the shadows, but the hunters were not far. A drone floated overhead, its beams sweeping dangerously close. He crouched behind a container, holding his breath. The child whispered softly, its voice trembling, "Danger." He nodded. "I know, but we'll get through." Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air, a beam of red energy slicing across the container. The metal burned where it struck, glowing hot. The man ducked low, running with the child, as more beams cut through the rain. The hunters had seen them, and now the chase was no longer silent. It was war. He dashed between the containers, the child clinging to him. A soldier leapt from the shadows, weapon raised. Without thinking, the man swung a broken pipe he had picked up, striking the soldier's helmet. The hit barely slowed the armored figure, but it was enough. The man shoved past, running until his lungs burned. Behind him, shouts rose, the soldiers spreading out like wolves hunting prey. At last, he reached the edge of the yard where the fence opened into a dark forest. The child lifted its weak hand again, and the old lock sparked open. They slipped through, the trees swallowing them. The rain faded beneath the thick branches, and the city's glow was left behind. The man stopped for a moment, gasping for breath. He looked at the child, who now seemed even weaker, its glow faint as a dying star. He whispered, "Your ship is out here, isn't it?" The child nodded slowly, whispering one last word, "Yes," before closing its eyes again. The man carried it deeper into the woods, his body aching, but his resolve stronger than ever. He had no map, no plan, but he knew he had to reach the crash site. Behind him, the sound of engines grew louder, the hunters entering the forest too. They would not stop, not until they had the child. But the man had made his choice, and there was no turning back. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Not as a broken man hiding from the world, but as someone fighting for something greater. He whispered into the night, "You trusted me, little one, and I won't let you down." And with those words, he disappeared into the dark forest, the hunters closing in behind. The forest was thick and wet, branches hanging low, mud pulling at the man's worn shoes. He pushed forward, carrying the child close, its glow dim like fading embers. Every step was hard, every breath sharp, but he did not stop. The hunters were behind, their engines humming, their red lights cutting through the trees. He could hear their voices, cold and certain, calling out commands in their strange tongue. The hunt was reaching its peak. The child stirred weakly in his arms, whispering a single word, "Ship." The man nodded, though he had no idea where to look. But then a faint, blue shimmer flickered ahead, through the trees. It was small, like a broken signal, but it guided him. He followed it, moving faster despite the burning in his muscles. Behind him, the crack of energy weapons split the night. Red beams hissed through the air, striking trees, burning bark to ash. The man ducked low, rushing between roots and rocks. A blast struck close, throwing dirt into his face. He shielded the child with his body, feeling heat lick across his back. But he kept running, refusing to let go. At last, through the trees, he saw it. A broken starship half buried in the earth, its hull cracked, smoke rising from its side. The sight was unreal, metal glowing faint blue in the moonlight. This was the child's home, its last hope. The man staggered toward it, hope burning in his chest. But before he could reach the ship, shadows closed in around him. The hunters had caught up, red visors glowing in the dark. They circled him, weapons raised, their voices cold and final. The man backed against the ship's broken hull, holding the child tight. He had nothing to fight with, only his hands, his body, his will. But when one soldier stepped forward, aiming its weapon, the man moved without fear. He placed himself fully in front of the child, arms wide, shielding it. "Over my dead body," he growled. The soldier fired, the blast striking his side, pain tearing through him. He fell to his knees, but did not let go. Another blast came, burning across his shoulder. The child cried out, its glow flaring, but the man gritted his teeth. He would not move. He would not surrender. They could take his life, but not the child. The soldiers closed in, weapons crackling with power. The man braced himself for the end, holding the child tight to his chest. Then the ground shook, a deep rumble echoing through the forest. A massive beam of light cut through the night, blinding the hunters. From above, a great ship descended, its size filling the sky. Blue light poured down like a storm, pushing the hunters back. The man blinked, his vision blurred. Through the light, he saw figures descending, tall, armored, but different. Their armor shone silver and blue, their weapons bright with energy. These were not hunters, these were protectors. They landed with force, their movements sharp, their voices commanding. In moments, the battle shifted. The hunters shouted, firing wildly, but the silver-armored warriors struck with precision. Energy clashed against energy, the forest alive with fire and light. The man collapsed against the hull, his body weak, blood running from his wounds. He tried to stay awake, his eyes on the child. The little one looked at him, its silver eyes glowing strong again. It reached out, touching his chest with both small hands. Warmth spread through him, easing the fire of his wounds. But the strength was not enough to heal all. He coughed, whispering, "Stay safe, don't let them take you." The battle raged, but slowly the hunters were forced back. One by one, they fell under the blades and beams of the silver warriors. At last, silence filled the forest, broken only by the crackle of smoke. The man lay weak, his arms still around the child. Above him, the great ship hovered, blue light spilling across the ground. The silver warriors gathered around, their leader kneeling before the child. They spoke softly in the alien tongue, their voices respectful, almost reverent. The child whispered back, pointing at the man. The leader's glowing eyes turned to him, studying him with care. The man tried to speak, but his throat was dry, his body trembling. Still, he managed to whisper, "I kept my promise." Then his vision darkened, the world fading to black. The last thing he felt was the child's small hand clutching his, refusing to let go. The man drifted in darkness, floating between pain and silence. He thought it was the end, thought his life had finally slipped away under the rain and the fire. But then warmth spread through him, soft and steady, pulling him back. He opened his eyes slowly, blinking against a bright blue glow. He was no longer in the forest, no longer on the muddy ground. He lay on a smooth silver bed, surrounded by walls that pulsed with living light. Strange shapes moved above him, machines humming softly as they healed his wounds. His body no longer burned. His breath came easier, his chest lighter. He pushed himself up weakly, and then he saw her. The alien child sat beside him, no longer weak, no longer trembling. Her silver eyes were bright again, glowing strong, her skin shining with health. When she saw him awake, she smiled for the first time. It was small, fragile, but it carried more light than any star. She reached out and held his hand, whispering softly, "Safe." The man's throat tightened, his rough hands trembling as he held hers. He whispered back, "I kept you safe, little one, just like I promised." Before he could say more, the room shifted, doors sliding open. Tall figures entered, their armor gleaming silver and blue. At their head was a woman taller than all, her presence commanding, her eyes glowing like the child's. The child leapt from the bed, running to her, clinging to her leg with joy. The woman bent down, embracing the child with tenderness, her face softening. The man watched, realization dawning. This was not just any child. This was someone important, someone royal. The woman's gaze turned to him, and she stepped forward. Her voice carried strength, but also gratitude. "You protected her when no one else could," she said in broken human words. "You stood against death with nothing in your hands, yet you did not fail." The man lowered his eyes, unsure how to respond. He had lived forgotten, invisible, a shadow on the streets. And now here he was, standing before beings from the stars, being thanked by their leader. The woman extended her hand, and as he took it, a wave of warmth and power spread through him. In that moment, he felt seen for the first time in years. The warriors around bowed their heads slightly, showing respect. The woman spoke again, "A debt is owed, and it shall be honored." The walls shimmered, and in an instant, images filled the room. A home, warm and bright, with food and shelter. A life filled with dignity, free from hunger and pain. She looked at him, eyes steady. "This is yours now if you wish." The man's eyes filled with tears, his voice breaking. "I was no one, nothing, yet you offer me this?" The child ran to him again, tugging his hand, her small voice clear. "Family," she said, the word heavy but pure. The man's heart broke and healed at the same time. He pulled her close, hugging her as tears rolled down his face. The woman nodded, her voice soft. "She chose you, and in our way, that choice is binding." The man looked at the child, at her silver eyes shining with trust. He had lost everything once, but now he was given something greater than he had ever dreamed. Not just food, not just shelter, but purpose, belonging, family. Later, he stood at the window of the great ship, looking down at Earth. The city lights flickered far below, the streets where he once begged for scraps. For the first time, he did not feel like he belonged to the dirt. He belonged to something greater, to the stars themselves. The child stood beside him, her small hand holding his. And when she smiled at him, he knew his life had changed forever. He whispered into the glowing night, voice steady. "Sometimes helping a stranger can change your whole destiny." The stars answered with silence, but in his heart, he knew the truth. The homeless man was homeless no more. He was a protector, a hero, and for the first time in his life, a father again.